SUV at the front, pickup truck at the back. What is this witchcraft? Jared here with Carbuzz.com, and if you've been looking at mid-sized trucks like the Ford Ranger or Toyota Tacoma, but those options are just too big and cumbersome for you, Hyundai has a solution. This is the 2022 Hyundai Santa Cruz, and it's not a truck, according to Hyundai. They call this a sports adventure vehicle. Now, despite what Hyundai wants you to call it, the Santa Cruz sits in a new class of compact trucks along with the Ford Maverick that offer a small bed at the back and a much more reasonable size that's easier to park and negotiate versus mid-size options like the Tacoma and the Ranger. By the end of this video, I want to know, would you buy a Hyundai Santa Cruz, or would you buy a similarly sized SUV or the Ford Maverick? Hyundai is adamant that the Santa Cruz is not a truck. It's a sport adventure vehicle, and from behind the wheel, I think that's a little bit more than just a marketing shtick. It really does not feel like I'm driving a truck. In a good way, of course. As if you couldn't tell by looking at the front of it, the Santa Cruz shares a platform with the Tucson crossover. It's even built at the same assembly plant in Alabama. Because it shares the Tucson's platform, the Santa Cruz is very crossover-like to drive. The steering is very accurate. The chassis doesn't bounce around all over the place, and at highway speeds, it feels very controlled. So there are two engines available in the Santa Cruz. The SE and SEL trims get a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder engine that produces 191 horsepower and 181 pound-feet of torque, going out to the front wheels standard, or you can get all-wheel drive for $1,500. If you get that entry-level engine, power goes out through an 8-speed automatic transmission with fuel economy rated at 21 mpg in the city, 27 on the highway, and 23 mpg combined. Oddly enough, that's with all-wheel drive. If you get front-wheel drive, your highway fuel economy is going to drop by 1 mpg. I've never seen that before in any car. Not really sure why that happens. And if you're curious, that base engine can tow 3,500 pounds, which is not a lot by pickup truck standards, but it's a little bit more than you'd be able to tow in the Ford Maverick hybrid. But if you want more power and more capability, you have to step up to the SEL Premium or the Limited trim, which is what we have here. You get the same size engine, a 2.5-liter 4-cylinder, but this one gets a turbocharger, so you get a lot more power. 281 horsepower, 311 pound-feet of torque, going out to standard all-wheel drive through an 8-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission, which is very different than the standard 8-speed you get with the non-turbocharged engine. If you can afford it, this is the drivetrain that we recommend getting in the Santa Cruz. With the turbocharger, you get so much additional torque. It zooms past slower traffic. I love this 8-speed dual clutch transmission. It's a very unusual choice for a truck application, but it shifts very quickly and very smoothly. Plus, you get more capability with this drivetrain. The Santa Cruz can tow 5,000 pounds if you get the turbocharged engine. That's more than the Ford Maverick can tow with its EcoBoost engine. So if you're just shopping these trucks on pure capability, I think it's the Santa Cruz that you'll want to buy over the Ford Maverick. It can tow a little bit more, it has more power and more torque on tap. However, the Ford Maverick offers a base hybrid drivetrain that can get up to 42 miles per gallon. There is no such option here on the Santa Cruz, so if you're looking for the best efficiency, I still think that the Maverick is the better option, especially if you're buying it to use for work purposes. You're going to drive it around for your company. Maybe you have a landscaping or a painting business. I think the Maverick would be the better option there. I love this drivetrain as is, but I think the next move for Hyundai has to be electrifying it in some way. I'd love to see a Santa Cruz hybrid or even a fully electric model. I think that's the next step, because just having 40 mpg or even an all-electric with 300 miles of range for city applications, the small platform that drives extremely car-like very well, I think that's the next move for Hyundai. But as it is, I think the Santa Cruz is a really nice driving experience. If you want an SUV driving experience that's a little more truck-like, the Maverick might be the better option for you. But if you've never owned a truck before and you really just want it to feel like a crossover, I think Hyundai has definitely nailed that a little bit more than Ford has. Both of these compact trucks are great to drive, so you really can't go wrong with either of them. So now that we're finished driving, let's pull over to check out the interior. But before we do, be sure to leave a like on this video if you're enjoying it so far, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell to be alerted of our latest videos. If you want to learn more about the 2022 Hyundai Santa Cruz, be sure to check out carbuzz.com. So if you've been inside a Hyundai Tucson lately, this cabin is going to feel very familiar to you. Now the base Santa Cruz starts at about $24,000, just under that, but the trim we're sitting in is the limited, the most expensive one you can buy. So it costs around $40,000. That is a pretty big price spread from the base Santa Cruz up to the limited, but you do get a lot of cool features for the money. We've got the leather seats, which you can only get on the limited trim, with this cool orange stitching that gives it a little bit of a rugged but still modern look. I like that little orange accent decal thing that's over there on the dash. That looks quite nice as well. In addition to the leather seats, the seats are also heated and ventilated, which is nice. You can't get that on a Ford Maverick. We also have a heated steering wheel, which is quite nice as well. The limited trim is going to get this larger 10.25-inch touchscreen. We've got dual zone automatic climate controls. When I throw it into reverse, the limited trim has this excellent 360-degree camera with very good graphics. And the other thing you get on the limited trim as well, in addition to a wireless charging pad, you also get another screen up here that replaces your conventional gauges. Those look really cool. You can fiddle around with the drive modes to change the different themes here on this gauge cluster, which is quite cool. And when you put on your turn signals, you get Hyundai's excellent blind view monitor. I think this is a great feature that they've been putting on a lot of their cars. I think this cabin is great. The seats are comfortable. Everything looks super ultra modern. In fact, unless you were looking out of the back, you would never tell that you were in a truck. You'd think you were just in an SUV. There's only one thing that I don't like about it, and it's actually specific to the top limited trim that we're driving. It's this 10.25-inch touchscreen. There's nothing really wrong with the screen other than the graphics kind of look like they belong in Windows XP. The system is actually fine, but you lose your wireless CarPlay and Android Auto capabilities if you get the larger screen. If you get the base 8-inch screen that comes in all the other Santa Cruz trims, you can wirelessly project Android Auto or wireless CarPlay to the screen, but you lose that functionality with the larger screen. That's really weird. The other thing that I'm not fond of here is these touch controls. To raise the volume or change the temperature, you have to use these touch capacitive controls that are super finicky. I didn't love them in the Tucson, and I really don't like them here on the Santa Cruz. I think that if you're a truck buyer, this is going to be maddening. Truck buyers want big knobs that they can grab with a glove, and this is the exact opposite. Now, if you get any other trim besides this, you get a regular volume knob, and if you get one of the lower trims with the base engine, not the turbo engine, you get regular knobs and dials for the climate controls. Honestly, this would be enough to make me not consider getting the limited trim. I think I would step down to the SEL Premium just to get more knobs and buttons. Now here in the back seat, we get a little bit less room than you're gonna see in the Ford Maverick, but I think the legroom and headroom is perfectly acceptable for an adult. Back here, we do have air vents and 2 USB ports as well. My cup holders are here on the door, and I've got a little bit of extra storage if I pull up these seat bottoms. Let's wrap up with the exterior, where the Santa Cruz is one of the most unique vehicles you're gonna see out on the road. It looks almost like no other vehicle except for maybe the Hyundai Tucson, because the two share pretty much an identical front end, which is not a bad thing. We've got this really awesome shield grille with these really dynamic headlights. I love the fact that you almost can't even tell that these are lights until they're on. That's a nice design touch. Here at the side, there's a lot more to differentiate the Santa Cruz from the Tucson. Obviously, we've got a bed at the back, but we've got other smaller details too, like these 20-inch wheels that you get here on the top limited trim. You get 18s on the other versions of the Santa Cruz. It's also surrounded by this black body cladding with this cool triangular pattern. Now this serves a dual role purpose of making the Santa Cruz look more rugged than the Tucson, while also protecting you from rock chips and door dings in parking lots. To give you a good idea of the Santa Cruz's size, it's just under 196 inches long, meaning it's about 14 inches longer than its Tucson sibling, and you can really feel that length out on the road. That being said, the Santa Cruz is still 14 inches shorter than a Honda Ridgeline and a full 16 inches shorter than the shortest Toyota Tacoma. And as we wrap up talking about the exterior, we gotta talk about the bed. This is a super important element. It's only a 4-foot bed, meaning it's the smallest that you can get in any pickup truck. The Maverick has about half a foot in length over the Santa Cruz, but we do have some nice storage solutions here that you don't get standard on the Maverick. The Maverick comes standard with no bed liner. This comes standard with a dampened tailgate, so you can drop that down. You can also change the positioning of it so you can kind of have it half open. As you can see, we do have a bed liner in here that comes standard as well, as does this tonneau cover, which is quite great. We've got this little Hyundai logo. You just pull this right here and it will retract all the way back. There is some disadvantage to that. You can see it takes up a little bit of storage space here, but I do like that that comes standard, which is quite nice. We also have some storage here on the side. You can open up these little cubbies right here so you can put extra stuff there. Right above it, we have these little divots so you can put some plywood right here to create a secondary floor. We've also got this railing system that comes standard, and perhaps the coolest part about the Santa Cruz bed is that we have a trunk. You have this little sign that says open right here with a little trigger. If you go ahead and open that up, you can see we have a small trunk, so you can put small items in there that you don't want to roll around or that you want to protect from the weather. The other really cool thing about this trunk is that it does have a drain plug right here. So if you're at a tailgate and want to fill the whole thing up with ice, you can let the ice melt and just drain it out through the bottom of the truck. That's really cool. The last feature I wanted to mention are these little steps here on the side of the bumper. They're quite useful for just reaching in if you want to grab something quick, but because there's no great place to put your hand here, I find that the steps are a little bit awkward to use. So that was the 2022 Hyundai Santa Cruz. Pricing starts at about $24,000 and goes up to about $40,000 for this limited trim. If I were in the market, I would want the turbocharged engine that you get in the limited, but I would step down to the SEL Premium for about $35,000. You won't get leather in the surround view camera, but you also won't get those fiddly touch controls. Now, this is a very interesting comparison against the Ford Maverick. I like the capability here. I also like how the Maverick drives, and I think the interior is a little bit nicer with a little bit more optional equipment and a little bit more standard safety technology. I think that both this and the Ford Maverick are excellent alternatives to those mid-sized pickup trucks that have just grown so much in size lately. In my opinion, if you were looking for the turbocharged engine option, I think you'd be better off with this, as it offers more power and more towing capability. But if you want the best fuel economy and you're going to use it for fleet or business purposes, I think that the Ford Maverick Hybrid is the better option.